The briefcase hit the platform first, at 7:22 a.m. on a Tuesday in November, at the Jefferson Park Station on the CTA Blue Line in Chicago, Illinois, and the latch gave on impact and the contents spread across the yellow warning strip at the edge of the platform. Legal pads, a manila folder, a retractable pen, and a pair of reading glasses in a soft gray case. And by the time Chidinma Nwosu caught herself against the concrete pillar with her left forearm, the glasses case had come to rest 4 inches from the platform edge. She did not look at her arm. She looked at the glasses case. She picked it up first. She held it for 1 full second before she picked up anything else. Then she gathered the folder, the pads, the pen, and she straightened and turned, and every commuter on that platform, who had watched the whole thing happen, looked away when she looked up. Every commuter except one, Officer D. Reyes of the Chicago Transit Authority Police, was still standing 12 feet behind her, near the yellow pillar at the top of the stairs. He had both hands on his belt. The platform had been crowded for the 719 Blue Line toward O'Hare, which had been delayed 6 minutes by a signal issue at Cumberland, and the crowd had pressed forward when the announcement came, and he had used a clearing motion, 2 hands, shoulder width, a single forward push, to move people back from the edge. It was the motion he used every morning on this platform at the 7 o'clock rush. He used it without looking at faces. He had been doing it for 2 years and 11 months. He looked at the woman who had gone into the pillar. He looked at the briefcase she was closing. He looked at the people around her who had decided, with the particular efficiency of a Chicago morning commute crowd, that there was nothing to see here and that the train was coming. "Ma'am," he said, "please clear the yellow line." She looked at him for 3 seconds. Her face did not change. "I understand," she said, and stepped back. The train came. She did not get on it. Chidinma Nwosu was 39 years old. She weighed 121 pounds, which was 11 pounds less than she had weighed 14 months ago, when case number 22-CR-0418, United States v. Gerald Okoye, had first been assigned to her desk on the 14th floor of the Dirksen Federal Building on South Dearborn Street in Chicago. The 11 pounds had not been a decision. They were a record of the 5:30 a.m. mornings, the dinners eaten at her desk at 10 p.m., that were usually a granola bar and whatever coffee was left in the pot, the Sundays that looked like weekdays, and the particular kind of weight that comes off a person who has been doing work that does not allow them to stop thinking about it even when they have stopped working on it. She was from Enugu originally. She had come to the United States at 17 on a scholarship to Northwestern, had gone to Northwestern Law, had clerked for a federal judge in the Northern District for 2 years, and had been an assistant United States attorney for the Northern District of Illinois for 9 years. She was the kind of attorney who was given cases other attorneys had tried to build for years, without being able to make them stand. She was given those cases because she could read the architecture of them, where the weight was, where the gap was, how to position what you had so that what you needed would eventually come to you. It was not a method she could fully explain. It was the thing Dr. Owusu had told her once, in her 2nd year at Northwestern Law, that she had and that could not be taught, which was the ability to hold a complex system in her head and see the single point where it was most fragile. Case 22-CR-0418 was the most fragile case she had ever been handed. It was also the most important. She carried a black leather briefcase that had been her mother's, Nkechi Nwosu, who had been a magistrate judge in Enugu for 21 years before she died in 2019. The briefcase was worn smooth at the corners from 2 decades of use, and the brass clasps had been replaced once by a repair shop on Devon Avenue in Chicago that Chidinma had found by asking around the courthouse until someone told her who could be trusted with it. Inside the briefcase, in a sleeve along the back panel, were her mother's reading glasses, tortoiseshell frames, the left lens with a small scratch in the lower corner from a night in 2011, when the case had been knocked off a desk during a long session in chambers. Chidinma used them when the documents were small and the light was bad, and she needed to be sure she was reading what she thought she was reading. She had never gotten her own prescription lenses for close reading. She was not sure she wanted to. Case 22-CR-0418 had come to her 14 months ago from a senior attorney who had been trying to build it for 2 years and had hit a wall in the witness architecture that he could not find a way around. The case involved a pattern of evidence suppression and civil rights violations by the commanding officer of Chicago's 3rd District over a period of 6 years. It was not a simple case. The primary evidence was procedural, internal reports altered after the fact, complaint files that had been closed without investigation, a pattern of outcomes that only became visible when you laid 23 cases side by side in a specific order, and measured the gap between what the record said and what the complainants had documented independently. Chidinma had spent the first 4 months doing nothing except reading those 23 files. She had read them the way her mother had read briefs, with the reading glasses and a yellow legal pad and a practice of writing, in the margin of every page that mattered, a single word that captured what the page was actually saying rather than what it appeared to say. By the end of the 4th month, she had 4 legal pads full of single words in the margins, and she knew exactly where the wall was and how to go around it. She was carrying in the manila folder that had come open on the platform the draft brief for that morning's grand jury presentation. The grand jury session was at 9 a.m. She had 93 minutes. She did not look like an assistant United States attorney that morning. She looked like a woman in a dark coat who had just gone into a concrete pillar and was standing at the edge of a train platform in Chicago at 7:23 a.m. gathering papers off the floor, while the commuters around her streamed past without breaking stride. She had dressed for court, a charcoal blazer over a white shirt, dark trousers, low heels. The briefcase was in her right hand relatched. Her left forearm, where it had taken the pillar, would bruise by noon. She did not know this yet because she had not looked at it. She was looking at Officer Reyes. He was still near the pillar. He was watching the platform with the particular inattentiveness of a person whose attention is everywhere at once and therefore nowhere specific. The 724 blue line was showing on the board. She had missed the 722. She had 92 minutes to the Dirksen Federal Building, which was 23 minutes on the blue line plus a 6-minute walk, plus the security line at the building entrance, which at this hour on a Tuesday was 11 minutes on a good day and 18 on a bad one. She walked toward Officer Reyes. "Excuse me," she said. He turned. "I want to file a report. What you did when you cleared the platform. I was pushed into the pillar. I'd like to have that documented." He looked at her. He looked at the briefcase. He looked at her coat. "That was a standard crowd control procedure," he said. "There was a delay on the line, ma'am. The platform was at capacity." "I understand what the platform was," she said. "I'm asking how to file a report. If you feel you were injured, you can speak to a CTA supervisor at the customer service window on the lower level." She looked at him for 2 seconds. "Thank you," she said. And then she walked toward the stairs. The CTA Blue Line Jefferson Park Station at 7:24 a.m. in November smelled of diesel and cold concrete, and the particular mix of coffee and damp wool that a Chicago morning rush platform accumulates from 500 people passing through in 40 minutes. The overhead announcement board cycled through 3 other delayed trains. The heating unit mounted to the ceiling near the far pillar was producing warmth in the general direction of the platform, but not reaching anything below eye level, and the cold that came up from the tracks moved in a current along the yellow strip at the edge and kept the temperature at ankle height about 6 degrees below what it was at shoulder height. Chidinma had been standing in it for 3 minutes, and her feet were already cold through her shoes. She went down the stairs to the lower level. The customer service window was staffed by a man of about 30, whose name tag read Supervisor V. Garza, who was eating a breakfast sandwich and not looking at the window. He looked up when she knocked on the glass. She explained. He listened. He chewed. When she finished, he said, "If there was a crowd situation, the officer would have followed standard protocol. I can give you a comment card." "I'd like more than a comment card," she said. "That's our process for incidents of this nature, ma'am." Was there a physical injury? She thought about the forearm. Possibly. If you'd like to seek medical attention, you can document that separately and include it with the comment card. He slid one through the slot in the window. It was a pale yellow card, the size of a postcard, with 5 blank lines and a box in the corner labeled incident date. She looked at the card. She put it in her briefcase, between the reading glasses case and the manila folder. She went back up the stairs. The 728 Blue Line was 3 minutes out. She sat on the bench near the north end of the platform to wait, and she opened the briefcase on her lap and checked the brief, smoothing the pages that had taken a crease from the fall, reading the top of each page to make sure the order was intact. The reading glasses were still in their case. The case was not damaged. She held it for a moment, the way she had held it when she picked it up from beside the platform edge 4 feet from the tracks, and then she put it back in the sleeve and closed the briefcase. She had the brief. She had 88 minutes. The grand jury was at 9 a.m. She was going to be there. The woman sitting at the other end of the bench had been watching since Chidinma came back up the stairs. If this story is already sitting in your chest, stay with me. Because what this woman on the other end of this bench knows, and what she does with it, is something that will change what happens in that grand jury room at 9 a.m. in a way Officer Reyes and his captain did not see coming. She was 67 years old, Jamaican by birth, Chicago by choice since 1981. Her name was Constance Asante, and she had been a court reporter in the Northern District of Illinois for 29 years. Before she retired in 2018, she took the Blue Line every Tuesday and Thursday to visit her sister in Logan Square. She carried a cloth bag from the Harold Washington Library and wore a wool coat the color of a London bus, red, which she had owned for 11 years, and which was the warmest coat she had ever found at any price. She had been on the platform since 7:15. She had watched everything from this bench. She had watched the officer's clearing motion. She had watched the woman go into the pillar. She had watched the reading glasses case come to rest near the edge. She had watched the woman pick up the glasses first. Constance Asante had spent 29 years in federal court watching attorneys. She had watched the way they carried themselves, the way they held paper, the way they checked a document for order under pressure. She knew what a federal briefcase looked like. She knew the seal. She knew the way a person moved when they had somewhere to be and were not going to let anything stop them from getting there. She had also seen the case number on the folder before it was closed. Not all of it, enough of it. 22-CR-0418. She was a court reporter. She remembered numbers the way other people remembered faces. She knew that number. She had been in the room when parts of the preliminary record were filed. She had transcribed motions in that case in her last months before retirement, when she was training her replacement and taking reduced assignments. She knew the defendant's name. She knew what the case was about, and she knew, sitting on this bench with her library bag in her lap, exactly what it meant that the woman who had just been shoved into a concrete pillar by a CTA officer and handed a comment card by a supervisor was the attorney building that case. She did not say anything to Chidinma, not yet. She took out her phone and she made a call. The call lasted 41 seconds. The person she called was not a lawyer, not a judge, not a journalist. He was a retired U.S. Marshal who had worked courthouse security in the Dirksen Federal Building for 19 years, and who still had, in his phone, numbers that most people outside federal law enforcement did not have. He made a call of his own. That second call lasted 6 minutes and was received at 7:34 a.m. by Marcus Dubemachebe, United States Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, on his personal cell phone, while he was in the back of a car on the Eisenhower Expressway heading downtown. He listened without speaking for most of the 6 minutes. When the retired marshal finished, Achebe said, "Which platform?" "Jefferson Park, Blue Line." "She's still there. Train's 3 minutes out." "Don't let her get on it alone," Achebe said. And he told his driver to take the Harlem Avenue exit. Constance Asante moved down the bench. She sat beside Chidinma. "Excuse me," she said. "Do you know case 22-CR-0418? Chidinma looked up from the briefcase. "I was a court reporter, Northern District. I transcribed some of the early motions." Constance kept her voice low and level, the way you speak when you have spent 29 years in rooms where precision mattered, and where the wrong word at the wrong volume could change a record. "I know who you are. I know what happened this morning, and I know that the man who pushed you into that pillar," she paused one beat, "works for the man you are about to indict." Chidinma sat very still. She looked at Constance Asante. She looked at the bench. She looked at the tracks. Captain Okoye, she said. It was not a question. Officer D. Reyes, Constance said. 3rd District, assigned to CTA Transit Detail 18 months ago. His commanding officer in the 3rd District is Captain Gerald Okoye. She opened her cloth bag and took out a folded piece of paper. It was a printout. She had printed it at home that morning because she printed everything she thought might matter, which was a habit from 29 years of never trusting her memory alone. I printed the 3rd District roster 2 weeks ago when the case number came up in the news. I keep records. She handed Chidinma the paper. Chidinma looked at it. The name was in the 3rd column, 5th row. D. Reyes, 3rd District, CTA Transit Detail. Commanding Officer, Okoye, G. She closed the briefcase. She pressed both hands flat on her knees for 3 seconds. Then she reached into the briefcase for the reading glasses. Marcus Achebe arrived at the Jefferson Park platform at 7:41 a.m. He came up the stairs in a dark overcoat without ceremony, without staff, without announcement. He was a man of 54, broad through the shoulders, who moved through spaces the way people move when they have spent enough years in rooms where their presence was the fulcrum of the proceeding and have decided they no longer need to announce that. He looked at the bench. He looked at Chidinma. He sat down on the other side of her. "Are you hurt?" he said. "My forearm," she said. "I'll look at it after the session." "The session is covered. Kowalski can open. You need to be seen first." "I need to be there." He looked at her for 1 second. "You'll be there." He took out his phone. He made 3 calls in the next 9 minutes, right there on the bench, his voice quiet and specific. The first call was to the CTA's legal counsel. The second was to the Inspector General of the Chicago Police Department. The third was to a number that Constance Asante, sitting at the far end of the bench and not trying to listen but listening anyway out of 29 years of professional habit, recognized as a federal internal affairs line. He did not raise his voice on any of the 3 calls. He did not say Officer Reyes's name on the first 2. On the 3rd call, he said it once, said it clearly, and then said the name that came after it, Captain Okoye, and the way he said that name was the way you say the name of something that is ending. Chidinma Nwosu arrived at the Dirksen Federal Building at 8:47 a.m. She had 13 minutes before the grand jury. She had her briefcase. She had the brief. She had her mother's reading glasses. She had a bruise coming up on her left forearm that was the exact shape of the edge of a concrete pillar, and that one of the building's security officers, a woman named Patricia, who had known Chidinma for 6 years, noticed when Chidinma signed in and said, "Chidinma, what happened to your arm?" "I'll tell you after," Chidinma said. She took the elevator to the 14th floor. She went to her office. She put her briefcase on the desk, opened it, took out the reading glasses and put them on, and read the first page of the brief from the top. It was in order. It was ready. It said what she needed it to say, and nothing it did not need to say, which was the standard she had held every document to for 9 years, which was the standard her mother had held documents to for 21 years before her, which was not a coincidence. She walked into the grand jury room at 8:59 a.m. and took her seat. At 11:22 a.m. that morning, the grand jury returned a true bill of indictment in United States versus Gerald Okoye. The formal complaint regarding the incident at the Jefferson Park Blue Line station was filed that afternoon. Not by Chidinma, she would have filed it, but it was filed before she had time, by Marcus Achebe, through the office, with the documentation that Constance Asante had provided, and the footage that CTA platform cameras had recorded at 7:22 a.m., and that the CTA's legal counsel, following the first of Achebe's 3 calls, had preserved in full before the end of the business day. The CTA Transit Authority police review that followed produced a mandatory revision to crowd control protocols at all high-traffic Blue Line platforms, requiring officers to identify individuals before applying physical contact and clearing procedures during delay situations. The revision was specific about what constituted a delay situation, what constituted capacity, and what constituted the difference between a crowd and a person. That distinction, between a crowd and a person, had not been in the previous version of the protocol. It was in this one. Officer Reyes was placed on administrative review. His file was flagged. The review was still open at the time Captain Okoye's indictment was unsealed. Supervisor V. Garza at the Jefferson Park customer service window received a formal written notice that his handling of the incident report did not meet CTA policy standards. He was required to complete 3 hours of retraining. He completed it. The comment card Chidinma had been given remained in her briefcase. She had not thrown it away. She put it in the sleeve behind her mother's reading glasses, in the same place she kept things she intended to remember. Not because she needed the evidence, because some things need to be kept close enough that you can feel their weight when you pick up the briefcase in the morning. And that weight reminds you of exactly what the work is for, and exactly who it is that the law is supposed to protect. 3 weeks after the indictment was unsealed, Chidinma was on the Blue Line again. Same platform. 7:19 train. She stood in the same spot she had stood on the morning of the push, near the north end, away from the stairs, and she waited. The platform filled around her. The announcement board showed a 2-minute delay. She held the briefcase in her right hand. She did not move from where she was standing. When the crowd pressed forward at the 2-minute mark, she shifted her weight to her back foot, turned slightly sideways, and let the crowd move around her the way water moves around something that has decided to stay still. The train came. She got on. She took the seat by the window and opened the briefcase on her lap, and took out the reading glasses and put them on, and read the first page of the next brief from the top. Officer Reyes thought he was doing crowd control. He thought the briefcase was luggage. He thought the woman in the dark coat was a commuter running late, indistinguishable from the other commuters running late. No different from the platform, no different from the crowd. But a crowd is not a person, and a person is not something you clear away. Chidinma Nwosu had spent 14 months building a case that was designed to hold. She had built it from the inside out, the way you build anything that has to survive pressure. From the document up, from the record out, from the single point of fragility, toward the structure around it. She had done that work in offices and courtrooms and grand jury rooms, where her name would never appear on the final order. She had done it because the law is the agreement a society makes about what it is willing to protect. And she believed in that agreement. She believed in it on the platform. She believed in it when the briefcase hit the ground. She believed in it when she was handed a comment card with 5 blank lines and told that was the process. She believed in it most of all when she walked into the grand jury room at 8:59 a.m. and put her mother's reading glasses on and read the first sentence of the brief out loud. You cannot remove someone from work they have already built into the world. You can push them into a pillar. You can hand them a comment card. You can stand with your hands on your belt and watch them gather their papers off the floor. But the work is already done. The record is already building, and the person you are looking at without looking at them, the person you have made invisible by the simple act of not reading her face, is the person who will walk into the room where your captain's name is the subject of the proceeding. The people this world overlooks are not absent. They are already in the room. They have been in the room. They are the reason the room holds. If justice came for someone who had been doing everything right and was still treated as though they were in the way, what would you want them to do? Keep quiet and file the comment card? Or pick up the briefcase, get on the train, and walk into that room at 8:59 a.m. anyway? Tell me what you would choose, and tell me why. Leave your answer in the comments. I want to read what you say. Subscribe for more stories about hidden strength, quiet power, and the people the world overlooks until they change everything. I'll see you in the next one.